Well, Dancer's decision to stay in the game, is one of those roads you cross, and you take that path, and your whole life is different. And if Dancer had come out of that game after 3 innings, he would have led a different life. I don't know if it would have been better or not, but I mean, he made the choice, and it's something he found he had to live with, and to try to live his life without any of those regrets. I mean, the novel begins in the 1950s, and I think sometimes people idealize that as looking back as though it were a really simple and easier time. And the period the novel covers really is a very tumultuous time. I mean, I chose it, I guess, because it's the era when I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and there was a lot of things changing, and there was both issues of race and the women's rights, and just a lot of change that took place. So I think it was an interesting, I chose a small town setting because I'm familiar with that, and I think it's easy to create a world that you can write about easily. But I found it really an interesting time to write about, and there was a lot happening, and I was always interested in history, and the history of our times, and I found that was fun to write about those events and weave them into a story, which about this man and his family. A lot of people have asked me how the source of my main character's name is Dancer Stonemason, and I wish I had a better answer. I know that I wrote a story about his son, Clayton Stonemason, before I knew who Dancer was, and then as I got interested in Clayton's backstory, it became the story of his father. And I remember like one day I got up and I had this image in my head, or this thought, that which was Dancer Stonemason is missing. I mean, Clayton had a difficult relationship with his father. I wasn't sure what that was, and then that name just popped into my head, and I don't know really where it came from. Maybe I like the sound of it, but it became, in the story that's his mother's maiden name. But it was an interesting, to me, an interesting sounding name, and I thought it would. There were times during the workshopping period process that people insisted I change it, but that's one thing where I didn't listen to the workshoppers, because I liked the name. I was a really big baseball fan growing up. I loved playing baseball, but I liked all team sports. I would play baseball and basketball and football. I just think there was something like the pace of baseball. It just made it something that I found fun to write about. I'm a Cubs fan, which sometimes we don't consider the same as being a baseball fan, but I do enjoy baseball, and I don't consider the novel to really be a baseball story, but I think having baseball as a key undercurrent or aspect of it, I think is good. I'm glad it's in there. I'm really not very good on messages, but I looked at it. I wanted to write a story. I guess when I started, I was interested. I had 3 children, and my relationship with my son and my daughters, and my relationship with my father and mother. I mean, those were interesting themes to me, I guess. I always thought like the worst thing that could happen would be to lose the respect of your children. And in this book, Dancer, he loves his sons, and something happens, and he does lose that respect, and it's a challenge to how you rebuild that bond. And I found that something I was really interested in, and I also found it very difficult to write and write effectively. So it took me a long time, I think, to capture that part of the story.